watching different videos, and definitely a great inspiration. And really received a lot of positive feedback before Mark came on about this question and answer. And so something that we're going to be doing today is obviously answering your questions about OCD, anxiety, and if you haven't been here before, you're just going to be asking your questions in the comments box. I'm going to be taking that and pulling it over here for us to start answering. Mark, I always have people introduce themselves because you know yourself way better than I do, and I don't want to miss anything. So what would you say? How would you introduce yourself, or who are you?
Yeah, it's always, I always find it's a complicated thing to do. So I usually just say, yeah, I'm Mark Freeman. And in this context, I used to struggle with a bunch of mental illness diagnoses, so OCD and generalized anxiety disorder, and addiction and depression. And then after getting over those, I realized there weren't a lot of mental health supports online. So I started creating mental health supports. I was executive director of a peer support charity for a while. I've been involved in Stanford's Medicine X e-patient program for several years. And I also have a book called You Are Not a Rock, which is all about mental health skills. And that's out in maybe 11 translations of that, I think now. And that's all about taking and adapting design thinking and business strategy tools for this big innovation we make in our lives with recovery. And as part of that work, I helped write anxiety disorder and OCD equality treatment standards for our healthcare system here. And I also now sit on our committee in our healthcare system that assesses technology for inclusion in the healthcare system. And I am a world-renowned donut connoisseur. The end. Yeah.
So I don't know what that means exactly. Do you like donuts?
I love donuts.
Yeah.
Donuts, we can appreciate donuts the way we appreciate good wine.
I haven't had anyone say that before, and so that's pretty amazing. So, and are you in Canada?
So yeah, I'm up in Toronto, and but yeah, it's an honor to be here today, virtually. But yeah, Nathan, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and everything Mark mentioned, I have down in the description. I've got your book in there, YouTube channel,
Thank you.
Kind of just who you are, like amazing stuff. And so,
thank you.
With what we have here, hopefully these comments are coming through. Let me double check here, make sure I have all the permissions set up for this. Perfect. Might have to have two screens up here.
Okay.
So, awesome. Yeah, I have questions coming up here, but they're not showing up on our system.
Oh, okay, so yeah, they're not showing up for me, but if you know what they are.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the deal is, but maybe they'll pop up later.
Okay.
So I won't be able to pull up your questions onto the screen, but we'll try to answer them the best we can. So
technology, it's like a brain.
Technology, seriously. Yeah. So Mark does these live kind of question and answer things on your channel as well, and so does a really good job. All right, so we've got Anonymous 100. Okay. The psychiatrist says my daughter is not ready for ERP. She's on fluoxetine, but is not really doing much for her OCD. What do you suggest? I know as professionals, we don't talk about medications too often because I can't prescribe or anything like that. But I do know that when a lot of individuals are being prepared maybe for exposure and response prevention, or they're about ready to do treatment, we really focus on, what are they willing to do? Maybe it's medication to help them build that motivation to do treatment. We know medication alone isn't going to take care of OCD. It can definitely help, but doing the treatment definitely is where people build that readiness towards it. Sometimes medication is the key that can help them get there. You know, I don't know if you have any thoughts on.
I think because I see even the fear around ERP comes up a lot, where sometimes even something I'll see a lot is people saying, well, I'm not in the right place yet to do ERP. And it gets turned into this really big thing. And I think even, sometimes some professionals, if they're not really familiar with it too, they might see it as like, oh, it's this, like, you're not ready yet. But it really helped me, kind of like you're saying there, like, just start to look at what you are ready to do. And even I find really helpful with ERP is even because it is just about making changes, just starting to make some kind of change can be, and like that can be anything. It doesn't have to be something that we see as scary, but just learning how to make a change in our life. Or even the example I often give people is just learning how to not check your phone automatically is the same kind of practice, because you're going to notice an urge and you're going to say, okay, I noticed that urge to check a thing, but I'm not going to do it. And so we might not consider that ERP or scary, but it's a great way to start to learn. So yeah, it's like, even if ERP it's not ready yet, there are ways to start learning how to practice change.
I love that. Picking one thing a day, possibly to change or do different. A lot of people try some motivational interviewing, which is really looking towards how can I motivate myself. They're looking through pretty much their value system. Like, what is it worth for me to do treatment? What is it not worth? What is it taking away from me? What am I gaining from doing the things that I'm doing? And it can help them gain a better picture of maybe why this treatment could be appropriate for them or not. More than someone else just saying, this is what you should do. It's really helpful. It's helping them understand for themselves why this is worth it.
That is such a huge support. Because it's hard. It is, like, any change is hard work. But if you know why you want to do it, and it's easier.
I wish her the best, for sure. Let me go to another question here. HOCD, or sexual orientation OCD, has crippled me in social situations. Even when I'm just hanging out with friends, I feel really anxious. People notice this and call me out on it, which leads to further doubt. Any advice? I know just feeling anxious alone is going to make us, socially, we're going to notice how things are going and how they're not going. I know that when people start saying, hey, I notice you're feeling anxious, it's going to make us feel even more anxious. And so what I always tell people is, like, we want to do what we want to do. If I want to be in a social situation, that's what I'm going to do, regardless of what people might say or not say. I know we try not to avoid the best that we can, because it tends to make things a little bit worse. And so, if we know this makes my symptoms worse, sometimes we figure out, well, maybe we could do some treatment with something like that. Usually with a professional, of how can I turn this into a more positive experience for me? And so
I really liked what you said there about, like, I want to do what I want to do, because I find so sometimes we can get stuck on a label like HOCD or something like that. And I find it so useful to see that often some of the reasons we'll struggle with these different themes is because we are anxious about what other people are going to think. But then also, we then start to interact differently with other people, which just feeds the brain going, oh no, people are judging you. Okay, let's control even more. And so I really liked what you were saying there, Nathan, because I find it's so useful to shift the focus to, actually, I don't have to fix HOCD. I don't even have to fix social anxiety. It's about, I want to learn how to, be with my friends. I want to learn how to get great at social interactions. And as part of that, the brain is going to throw up stuff. Sometimes it's going to be just anxiety stuff. Oh no, people are judging me. Sometimes it's going to be, I don't know this about my sexuality or that. And it's saying, okay, the brain is going to throw up stuff, but here's the skill I want to build. here's the thing I want to do in these social interactions. And it's the switch to making it about those skills we want to build, which I find is so helpful.
I love that. It's about living life. And so that's often what I think about. Do what you want to do. Not how can I make these feelings go away. It's like, actually just do what I want to do, regardless if I have the feelings or not, whatever it is. And kind of just for you, Mark, I'm going to put these in the private chat so you can see kind of the questions as we're going along.
I should get there's like this amazing like behind the scenes component to this software.
I was boasting to Mark a little bit. I'm like, this is so cool. We can just like put that question up on the screen and then it doesn't work. So
no, it's not. For some reason, it's also not even letting me click on the private chat now. So I cannot see them.
Yeah.
But I will trust whatever is happening.
All righty. So, well, another question here. How do you know for sure if it's OCD and not just anxiety or hyperfocus? How do you identify non-obvious compulsions or rituals? Yeah, it's a big question.
Well, I always love so much of, I think it helped me to see so much of when I struggled with OCD was my brain trying to put things in categories and then attach lots of meaning to it. So it helped me to see my brain is this amazing device that loves to stick things in boxes. But it really helped me to see often it was wrong and it was unnecessary. And so it helped me to really shift it to what we were just talking about there, like rather than needing to say, oh, like this is OCD or this is hyperfocus or maybe this is anxiety. What are the things I want to do in life? And how do I do those better? And how do I do more of them? And that was even what it was about with recognizing the patterns of compulsions. Saying, okay, like I don't have to just focus on a problem if I'm just looking at my life and how do I do the things I want to do in my life. That's also how we start to catch what I like to call normal compulsions that we've come to, we just see as normal and necessary, but are part of the same practice. It's the pull towards those things we really value that can help us make many changes, whether we've stuck a label on them or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I think a lot of people also, I mean, they're wondering like, how do I know if this is OCD related or if it's not? And I think we can say, oh, that's OCD, but the brain will often doubt and kind of go back and say, well, are you sure? How do you know? And so it doesn't mean you can't ever have a solid answer, but we often say, well, maybe you get diagnosed with a trained professional for them to kind of give you that baseline. And, this is OCD, and everything past then that's doubting is like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's kind of our magic words. I don't know, choosing to not figure it out so that we can continue just living life regardless. Got another question here. Sometimes when I read a text or something, I go back like 2 or more words to read it again because I have a doubt, feeling not understood, like texting my friend and reading all I typed one time. So it sounds like checking to make sure the text is okay. So we know OCD's a big doubter. Wants people to doubt and question. For some people, this could be a compulsion. I'm going to go back and make sure whatever that threat isn't going to actually happen. And so I appreciate you being open with what you're going through. If we were using exposure and response prevention for something like this, we would say, we're going to try not to do that the best that we can, not check, and maybe even send text quicker than I normally would on purpose.
Yes.
And say, how about I doubt even more whatever I just sent and see what happens.
Yeah, those exercises help me so much because I could spend hours writing a simple email in the past where I'd be checking things I was about to send or had already sent and reading through them. And so, yeah, I wanted to help to just cut out all of the checking, but then to do a whole bunch of exercises around writing things, and whether it was like writing a thing and then sending an email immediately. But also a huge help was writing things and publishing them online without rereading them. And that was terrifying at first. But like, an exercise I did when I was working on this, I had to write a blog post on the bus ride to work. So I had about 20 minutes. I had to write the blog post and publish it when I got off the bus. No rereading. And it was such a great, because it felt absolutely terrifying, because I struggled with the fear that I would, bunch of things, like either I'd made mistakes, but also that fear that comes up a lot around, what if I like said something horrible in there and I have somehow missed it or forgot that I said it. So it's so terrifying at first, but it's so freeing. Like, it's amazing now in the work that I do now that I can, in 10 minutes, in, a short amount of time, bang out a blog post or a social media post, no rereading, no nothing, just post it and be done. It's so freeing.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. It seems like that's the theme, is like, do what I want to do and risk everything else, whatever I feel like that risk is. A lot of freedom.
It's this big vote of trust. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would guess that at the end of it all, you didn't get all the answers of.
No, don't get them.
Yeah. I think that's where a lot of people think, like, well, at the end of the whole thing, I'll finally know if I did something inappropriate, or if I, if I did send something I wasn't supposed to. It's like, we're not going to try to figure out those answers anymore.
Yeah. Just so much of the, it helped me to see too, so much of the challenge, because often we think that, like, I'm going to know I didn't do the bad thing, or I'm going to know this about that past anxiety, or I'm going to know people won't judge me, I'll know my sexuality and so on. And it helped me to see, even just that desire was a huge part of the problem. Like, as long as that is the thing we're chasing, the brain is going to just go, oh, so you want certainty? Okay, well, now you're uncertain about this. Now, go chase this and go chase that. As long as we want that certainty, it never ends.
Right. So I love that you said that. The certainty piece is such a fraud. Makes you feel like you can get that answer, but there is no answer. And so, be uncertain.
Yes, very.
So, another question here. Are ruminating to a compulsion is another compulsion? So is ruminating to a compulsion another compulsion? And if it is it possible to stop the compulsion at that point? Oh, that's an interesting question. So,
and what did they say, ruminating to a compulsion? What do they mean by that, I wonder?
Yeah.
Ruminating.
I'm wondering if they're wondering if what they're doing is a compulsion.
Yeah, ruminating about a compulsion.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a compulsion.
I think anytime we're ruminating without, especially with anxiety or that urge to know, like right now, we tend to already know it's a compulsion. And sometimes if we're not sure, like, is this a compulsion, this thing that I'm doing, and I'm ruminating about it? Our answer is like, I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Yeah, because I found that really helpful, because even when I was in OCD town, I thought all of my compulsions were good and normal. Like, I didn't have this is a bad thing, this is a compulsion, and this is a good non-compulsion. And so it really helped me, rather than kind of labeling things as compulsions, to just look at what do I want to spend my time and energy on in life? Because there were a lot of things that I would ruminate about that I saw as normal. Like, I saw it as very normal. If I was walking to the grocery store, I would purposely choose something to ruminate on before I left. Like, I'm very conscious all of the time. I was picking things to ruminate on. I would just be like, oh, I'm just going to go have imaginary arguments in my head with somebody at work. I thought that was good. And then but all I was doing was teaching my brain to do that all the time. And so it really helped to just start to look at, do I need to spend time and energy on this? Do I want to? And generally, no, I don't want to spend that time and energy in my head on it. And so I don't have to do it.
Yeah. I love that aspect, is like you have a choice. You know it's not something that's something you want to do, and to be able to feel that hope that because I don't want to do this, we can't just say don't ruminate and then I'll stop ruminating, but I have a choice on how I'm going to respond to that, whether I choose to allow my brain to just have thoughts and not do anything with it. Or I'm choosing to answer these thoughts with like everything's going to be uncertain no matter what you give to me. And eventually the brain gets it. Like, if you're not putting value to this thing, then I'm not going to put value to this thing. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing your personal experiences. We got Han Solo here.
Oh, he has a lot of issues. Yeah.
Yeah. How can I move on from real event OCD? The crippling anxiety and guilt that are real event OCD is horrible. And such a big topic. Just we all do things in our life, whether they're big mistakes, small mistakes, little things, big things, and we can feel guilty about them. We can feel anxiety about them. Especially as we get older, we realize like, oh man, why did I do all those things I did? Because we know better, because our brain developed and we finally know like that wasn't the best thing for me. But to me, I know that past experiences are supposed to be learned from. So if I learn something, like I'm not going to ever do that again, my brain is supposed to be cued to move forward and say, okay, well, now you learned, move forward. OCD doesn't want the person to move forward. And so we have to often say, learn from it. I could do treatment with this. I could choose to use exposure and response prevention and respond completely different to this event that happened. Not say it's good, not say it's bad, just is what it is. And I don't know about you, Mark, but I treat guilt, especially with something like this, kind of as a false signal, as I don't need this guilt. Like, I already went through these experiences. I felt what I needed to feel. So if I'm feeling guilt, it's kind of like anxiety. It's trying to warn me that there's danger when there's really not danger in this moment.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I find this is why it's so helpful to see that this stuff isn't just about anxiety. Like, the brain's happy to give you whatever uncomfortable experience is going to get us to do the compulsions. And so it's totally happy to swap in guilt, because often, we go, oh, but this is guilt. Oh, and it's a real event. Oh, now I've got to go do compulsions. And so, I find you mentioned they're so helpful for me. It was really useful to look at, are there things that I'm not letting myself do because I believe I need to resolve this thing somehow, usually by trying to do lots of impossible compulsions. That moving on is going to mean starting to do that thing that I think I need to put off until after I've somehow resolved the issue. That really the way to move on is to move on. And then, we get to bring along that feeling with us, just like we would with anxiety or uncertainty or anything else.
Yeah. It drives me crazy that that's what the brain wants to do is, fine, if you're not, the anxiety, how about some guilt with that too? And just to get you to attach. And we can often respond to it differently. I've often said, like, when the guilt comes, we're like, hey, this is awesome. I love this feeling. This is great. I hope it sticks around all day long. Thank you for joining the party. I'm so glad this feeling's here. Instead of the guilt coming in and it's like, oh, here it comes again. Here's the dread. Oh, I can't believe that thing happened. because when I'm responding that way, I'm saying this has a lot of meaning to it. But if I said, thank you for joining, then it teaches the brain something different. Like, wait a second, like, what is this? You're supposed to be freaked out by the feeling I just gave you. And so we definitely have to keep retraining that brain to learn something different.
100%. Brains are pretty useless. It's not like the spleen. Spleen never gave anybody problems.
Yeah. Unless you get it removed. I don't know how that all
works. Does that ever happen? I don't know.
Yeah. It's okay, Rob says, I am suffering so badly. I have a voice in my head telling me you need to tell your partner you cheated. But in reality, I didn't cheat. My brain goes to, you did, you just don't remember.
Brain.
I know, like we talked about, it's doubting. The brain really loves to doubt. And it's so frustrating that the logic is there, but you're feeling something completely different. And we know logic can't get us through to say, oh yeah, well, I already know I didn't, so I don't need to do it. Like, we're still going to feel it. And so we, just like before, I have people respond completely different to it. Instead of going to that, like, but I know I didn't really cheat, because that's just going to make you doubt every single time you have to say that. Often people might say, well, maybe I did, maybe I didn't, which I know sounds like a horrible answer, but it's to tell the brain, cool, you can keep throwing this out, but here's my answer. I'm actually almost agreeing with you in a way to say, I don't care. But I'm also not going to tell my partner that I cheated, because that would be a compulsion. That would be confessing in some way. And so we learn to say, the way I've been doing things hasn't been working, so I need to change something about that. And so maybe I don't remember. I don't know. To change that whole response to it. And be committed to it, not just like I do it once and then it didn't work. Yeah. It's like I do it every time that thought arises.
Yeah, no, that's such a key thing, because I think I find that these are also opportunities for us to see what we care about. Because of course, too, one, the brain knows. It's kind of this guy shouting on the street knows that, oh, if I throw up this, I know you're going to turn around and come tell me I'm wrong. And I'm going to say it because you're always going to tell me it's wrong. And so it's a way to get us to engage. I find it so useful in those moments to see what we really care about. Right? If it's throwing up something that we know is untrue about our relationship, well, of course that hurts because we really care about our relationship. And it's that moment to notice that and be like, yeah, I'm not, fine, brain, whatever. Yeah, maybe that happened, maybe it didn't. But the fact that this is making me anxious, it's a great reminder that I really care about my relationship and I want to grow it. And so how am I going to give time and energy to my relationship right now, instead of having this, conversation in my head with a brain, random guy on the street shouting things. And that kind of shift, and the brain does this with so many intrusive thoughts it throws up. It knows we're going to turn around and engage with it because we care about that. So it is so effective to say, oh yeah, I care about this thing. So why don't I go and give my time and energy to that thing I care about?
Yeah, I love that. Focusing on our values, because that's what it's attacking anyway, is I'm going to focus on that value that I have more than how can I get this all to go away? So, love that answer. I'm losing my voice, by the way, if you guys couldn't tell.
It'll hang in there.
Yeah. Last time I was losing my voice, I was on a live and then I found out I had COVID. So I don't think it's this time. I think got another one here. I've had a really bad day. I've been crying all day because I've had intrusive feelings and emotions that don't match intrusive thoughts. It's really painful. Can OCD create false feelings or emotions? I feel like this goes very similar to what we kind of just talked about. Create false feelings. to just say, if you're giving you a lot of anxiety or intrusive thoughts, how about some of this guilt, or how about some of the shame, or whatever feeling or emotion that happens. We don't always blame every emotion on OCD, but we know, especially when it's really intrusive, we can often say, this might be a trick from OCD. And the best thing is, what am I going to do about it when it does come up? Especially if I, felt depression, for example. I can't think my way through depression. I need to do something different about this moment. So even though it's raining outside, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go call somebody, or I'm going to do something out of my normal routine to show my brain that you can give me these emotions, whatever it is, but I do something different about it than what you want me to do. And essentially, it's allowing you just to live life.
The living life piece is always so key. Because I found too, when I was struggling with my brain, I had to just assume nothing would ever line up. Like, I think we kind of create this very fragile system when we expect the experiences in our brain to align with other, whether it's experiences happening in our life or thoughts we're having. And a lot of times we can create struggle and anxiety for ourselves just from wanting these things to line up, wanting them to be in this very kind of arranged manner, wanting them to be in order. And in some ways, what we get caught up in with thoughts is very similar to what many people will talk about as kind of being a stereotypical OCD thing that's not, because when we're struggling with horrible, violent thoughts and things like that, we're like, oh, I'm not bothered by things being out of order. And like, you see those memes about like wanting pens and pencils in order. And we're like, well, that's not really OCD. I find there is an element under there, a pattern that we sometimes get caught up in around thoughts and feelings. Like, we do often want our thoughts and feelings to line up nicely, but they don't. And when they don't, that can create a lot of distress if we want them to line up. So yeah, it really helped me to just want them to be a mess and all over the place, and then bringing it back to, I'm gonna live my life, and the thoughts and feelings, they can do whatever they want.
I love that. It sounds like learning to be really flexible with whatever comes your way.
Yes.
Yeah. I know it loves to follow a pattern. So if we have an idea of like, this is how life is going to be today, we already know. OCD loves to jump in there and kind of screw things up. And so having that flexibility, I love what you said, just let it be. Whatever it's going to be is what it's going to be. And,
then it can be kind of funny, because then it's, because it always helped me to recognize that anger kind of comes from when reality is not connected, or reality is misaligned with our desires. If we really want something, and then, reality is different, like we get frustrated, we get angry. But humor is very much just when reality doesn't align with expectations. We were expecting somebody to say one thing and they say another thing, and that's funny. Or we're expecting somebody to walk along and then something, falls, or they slip or something like that. And it's like slapstick, and it's humorous. And shifting it out of the desire category and into the very light expectation category. Then we can start to let it be funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it's a desire, we get angry. Yeah.
You're changing the whole reaction that you might have about it. Health anxiety. How do you approach it? What do you think?
I think it's a great time to talk about health anxiety. The last 2 years have been a great time to talk about health anxiety. It helped me. Yeah, like I used to go and get like multiple tests over and over again. I was, constantly monitoring physical sensations. I could create whatever physical symptoms I was most worried about. So yeah, it was a huge participant in health anxiety. I don't know what the word for that would be. But yeah, it really helped me to start to bring like all of these things, approach it like any uncertainty. That it's, you know, it's not a separate category. You know, the brain just knows if that's the thing that'll get us to react, that's the thing that's going to come up. And it was about really identifying values, identifying how I want to live, and living, because so often we put our lives on hold because of health anxiety. And then, of course, we're afraid of getting a disease or dying or something because we're not living our life. And so the brain's like, oh no, what if you get, you know, something interferes with life? What if you get this disease and it interferes with life? And it terrifies us because, we're putting life on hold for it. So I find living is the best antidote to health anxiety.
Yeah. And not problem solving. Like, do I actually have something or do I not? And I think the question most people ask me is like, but what if I miss it? What if I miss something that is actually there? And that's going to be the biggest question that we have to risk a lot of the time. I've had some people where they do have these physical symptoms because, like Mark said, your body can produce anything. Like, my heart's beating really fast because I'm really hyper focused on my heart beating fast, for example. But we often say, without reassurance, if there's a problem, we'll solve it. But I'm not doing anything until there's a problem. But I'm going to do my yearly checkup if that's my thing. If the doctor tells me something different, they tell me something different. And I often say, like, it has to slap you in the face that something is absolutely wrong. There's no question about it for me to maybe go see a doctor. And it really has to feel that way. There's zero doubt. It's almost 100% certainty there's a problem. And I've kind of shared this experience in the past, but so I had a heart procedure at the beginning of this year, and I started having symptoms, and I'm just like, you know what, it brought some anxiety. There could be a problem, maybe not. Kind of using that mindset, and it, continued to happen, and then it went away, and then it continued to happen, and until my watch finally said something like, hey, there's actually a problem. Like, I finally went to the doctor. And, at that point, it's like, I think that's what we live life to say, when something almost approaches me and says there's a problem, that's when I'll go out to seek maybe some medical advice. But I find for most people with health anxiety, nothing ever happens. I mean, we can't be 100% sure, but we have to be willing to take the risk that I'm willing to go to this party regardless of how I feel, or not take this protective measure with me because I'm saying there's a problem, and I'm choosing to be uncertain about it and not figure it out anymore. And if there actually is a problem, like, we'll always solve it. I think that's just what happens. And it's easy to say, but hard definitely in the moment.
Always. All of these things are intense in the moment. It is sweaty work.
Yeah. I have the fear that because of OCD, I will never get married. How should I approach this?
Oh, well, getting married is one way to approach it, but there's often steps that come before it.
Yeah. I've had people build exposure hierarchies on stuff like this, that obviously, like, you don't just get married, you download a dating app, and then you go on dates, and the brain says something's wrong, this isn't for you. The answer is always like, maybe, I don't know. But we take the steps towards something we actually want to do. If I want to get married, that's what I want to do, so I'm going to do it at some point. I'm not going to force it, but it's taking the steps to do what we want to do. So I download the dating app, I go on some dates, maybe get dumped, whatever it ends up being, and get to that point where finally get married. But the thing to do is to do it. Like, the only way to achieve something is to do it. Even if the fear is there, No one gets married knowing they're going to get divorced, as far as I know. So we be willing to take the risk that people say, this is it, this is the person for me. But it's like, who knows that? Nobody knows that. We think that's true. We're willing to take the risk, whatever it is, and hope for the best.
It is really common that, fears come up and anxieties come up around dating, and even if people are in dates, in all of the variety of themes and so on. Like often there are people say, oh, well, I don't want to get into a serious relationship because I first want to be certain I won't develop psychosis, or I want to be certain about my sexuality, or whatever it is. Or it might be a real event thing. I hear that too, where people say, oh, because I did this thing in the past, I think I can't be with somebody until I've resolved this. And so I find it so useful to see that it's not OCD that kind of does this thing to us. It's that us not getting into the relationship is the compulsion. Us avoiding the relationship, not letting the relationship develop, not supporting the relationship because we kind of are going to feel relieved and reassurance if it kind of falls apart because we're like, whoo, don't have to get into that commitment and so on. And so it really helped me see like that's OCD. So I had a lot of compulsions around relationships. I had to start approaching relationships differently and really looking at like the steps Nathan was talking about there. Like, what are the steps in a healthy relationship? And taking care of my mental health is about doing those steps. And not doing them is a way I would practice OCD. And on the way to, a serious relationship or something like that, if it is like a fear of, oh no, what if I develop psychosis? Or, oh no, what if I come out on my wedding day? I always tell people around that, because these fears come up a lot. It's like to get the biggest wedding possible, so that when you come out on your wedding day or you lose your mind on your wedding day, it's spectacular. And that's the way to really stick it to the brain, because the brain will want to like hold back and be like, no, I'm going to go set up a date with this person right now. You really make your brain squirm. And it was things like that helped me a lot. When the brain is trying to pull us back from life to go and live even more.
Right. I love that. You're not protecting, you're almost making it worse. You're providing a platform for it to say, cool, if it's going to explode, look at this. I'm going to make it even easier for you.
So if it's going to explode, we want it on the news. Like, we're not going to hide this. Like, we want everybody in the world to know about this.
Yeah, we move closer to the threat instead of pulling away.
Exactly.
Another health anxiety. So health anxiety comes, and I cannot break this one thought. What is your best suggestion to stop ruminating on one thought? Consistently thinking, overthinking of like little body twinges or sensations. Oh.
Yeah. The thing I always am curious about, that I always ask people, is like, have you learned how to stop ruminating about other stuff? So even if it is one thing that's bothering you, if it was a thing that didn't bother you, have you learned how to not ruminate about that? And sometimes it's about, first learning how to drop, and it could be something simple like the grocery list. Like or an email, if we find ourselves, or a text message, if we're like always thinking about dating apps and we see that as okay, what would it be like to not think about that stuff when it comes up? Because I find when we learn how to do it around one thing that we don't see as problematic, it's easier to learn how to apply that skill to things that do terrify us.
Yeah. And it comes back to that choice. Like, you have all the power in the world to decide what you're going to do about it. And I find, especially with physical symptoms, if we're so hyper-focused on a twitch or a sensation, we're going to keep noticing it. And so I usually have people write down, what are all the times I'm purposely noticing my sensation? If that is, in the morning, I always check my heart rate, or I'm always checking this twinge, or then it's like, I'm already setting the day up to know that I'm checking this stuff. if it's so automatic that like my brain all of a sudden starts noticing, we can change the reaction to it of like, if my thumb starts twitching, for example, just like we said before, I might be like, oh, I love it. I love how my thumb's twitching. This is so great. I hope everyone notices. Maybe it means I have ALS or whatever the fear or worry is of, I'm going to notice these sensations, but be different or respond differently to them. Especially if it keeps throwing me to that one body twitch, I might make it happen on purpose and be like, ooh, look at this. Yeah, if it keeps happening, that's great. And it's not to make fun of any illnesses or anything like that. It's more just to say, I'm noticing and I need to change the reaction I have. Instead of it being, oh man, I can't believe this is happening again. It's like, I'm so glad this is happening. I hope it happens all day. That would be wonderful. Just continue to change that reaction.
Yeah.
I get intrusive thoughts about doing, I get an intrusive thought when I'm out doing daily activities. It is unreasonable to do is it unreasonable to do a compulsion just to make sure I didn't accidentally act upon the intrusive thought? Yeah, yes. Simple answer is we already know it's a compulsion to control the situation or to gain certainty. And so if I have to check something, I think you kind of look at your motivation. Do I really want to do this? Or is anxiety telling me to do this? If it's anxiety, I already know it's a compulsion. If I'm just, I just want to make sure I didn't do something inappropriate, then, and I absolutely just want to check that because I think it's fun, then probably not a compulsion. But if I like have to know, and I'm not going to get past the thought until I know, for sure we say probably is a compulsion. And just like Mark said, like if it's going to explode, then maybe I'll do something out of the ordinary while I'm in public. So my brain's like, yeah, everyone saw me put my arms in there like this. Like, cool, then I'm going to better make it happen, to just take away the value. So I don't have to check because I actually know I did it, depending on what it is, of course. But
yeah, because something I find so, which is always really useful to see when we're exploring stuff like this, if we think that, for example, in that question, because I'm out in public doing something, so therefore we get into this logic argument with the brain where we're going, oh, well, but this is in public, so I can't risk cutting out the compulsion because people will see it, or it could be worse. And we start to add up these logical reasons in our heads why we need to do the compulsion. And I find, though, then the brain is going to take that and it's going to use them in other areas and other situations as we want to make changes. It's going to be like, oh, but you can't do it here because, right, you said in public you can't cut out the compulsions. It's too risky. And so by doing that, we actually make it harder for ourselves. And so, yeah, it really helped to, as Nathan was talking about there, like we got to learn how to risk it. Because otherwise the brain, as much as it'll seem logical and reasonable, it creates this trap. We always think it's protecting us. But then, so at first we think, oh, yes, this is a real problem I cannot risk. And we think we're building a fence to protect ourselves. But then as we try to move into the future, we discover it's a cage and we've trapped ourselves.
Yeah. That's, I love that thought. I mean, I don't love that thought, but I love it's, you think you're protecting. Never heard that before. That's wonderful. I get asked this one a lot. How do you combine treatment for OCD when it's combined with trauma? That is all about reassurance seeking. So finding the balance is hard. And so I don't know if you work much with trauma. I don't work much with it, but I know people often combine the same types of treatment. Just a little bit different though.
Yeah, because it really helped me to approach OCD as something often that I was using to control, and often they go hand in hand with trauma, because it's, in many ways, OCD, like as we've been talking so much about, it's about trying to prevent bad things from happening. So particularly if we had an experience where like a really bad, painful thing happened, it's so natural that we have found these ways to try to bring control and certainty into our lives. But then, like we were just talking about there, that's those behaviors that at first seem like they're protecting us, that seem like they're bringing control, actually start to become constrictive. And so I find that it's totally possible, and I would even say for everyone, very useful to see that even if we don't see ourselves as struggling with trauma, we're often still trying to avoid a pain. So even if we haven't experienced the pain in the past, we're trying to avoid experiencing a pain in the future. And so often there is that younger self there with us who has experienced some trauma or experienced some pain. And working on these skills is about acknowledging where that's coming from. And then it helped me so much to see it as teaching my younger self a new way to interact with uncertainty. So honoring why he didn't want to interact with that uncertainty, but now showing him a different way of doing it. So I often describe it to people as like kind of you're babysitting your younger self, and you've got to teach them how to go and ride a roller coaster. And all they're thinking is like, I'm going to die on the roller coaster. I am going to vomit. I'm not going to like it. And how do we teach them that it can be a fun experience? We know why they're afraid, but we're going to show them how to enjoy it.
Yeah. And the only way to do that is to experience it over and over and over again. When she talked about reassurance seeking, I often look at, how many times do we need reassurance from somebody outside of anxiety, outside of OCD, outside of trauma? We don't need that reassurance very often. And so I always look at like, who's driving the car today? Do I need to ask this question because it's the only way for me to feel comfortable? If so, we sometimes practice not using that reassurance, not asking that question again. If it's just something that I haven't asked in like a year, and I'm just curious what they're thinking about, it might say go for it. But for the most part, people kind of know these are the questions I keep asking day after day, and it's just not making me feel better. And that's not something I want to do, so I'm going to choose not to do it anymore. And way easier said than done, but allowing you to, kind of the theme we're talking about is live life. We're not living life in the past. We're not living life in the future. We're living life right now in this moment. And that's where we got to be. And so if we're doing behaviors that don't bring us life right here in this moment, it's usually not something we want to strive towards doing anymore. How to stop rumination from past conversations with rude, toxic people.
What I always find useful is start to look at with kind of any rumination. So one there, I would look at rumination in general, because it's rare, right, that we actually do only ruminate about one thing. But maybe there's one thing that annoys us or troubles us. But yeah, so part of it I would look first at rumination in general. But then, with the past experience, something I always found helpful to explore was, what is it I'm trying to control? Because I'm not a time traveler. So this ruminating on the past thing, like it's not going to change anything. But in that moment, clearly I was, I'm hurt by something. I'm trying to get some control and certainty over some pain. So what is it I'm trying to control? And how do I start to interact with that differently? Because really, by going over it, I'm now the one that's creating the pain. I'm kind of, there absolutely was a wound there, but now I'm just ripping off the scab every single time and opening it up to like dig around in it. And so that creating that pain for myself is not going to be useful. Why do I keep digging around in this wound? Like, what is it I'm trying to chase there? And how do I start to give that to myself in other ways?
I love that. Is it normal to feel a lot of anger about my OCD episodes? Man, from the people I've worked with, yeah. It seems like there can be a lot of anger. And, we often see once we start reducing some OCD symptoms, sometimes that anger starts reducing as well. Because I'm not so mad about having all these thoughts anymore. I'm not so mad about, people learn to accept. I've learned to accept that thoughts are what they are. Some days might be worse than others. But we don't have those expectations of, today's a good day because I only had 5 thoughts.
Yeah.
Because that means tomorrow when I have 20 thoughts, I'm going to be angry. Because yesterday was a good day. That we kind of just allow that acceptance. There's going to be thoughts, maybe some days not. Especially when there's lots of symptoms. Definitely anger loves to join the party. And I don't know if you've experienced that or not, Mark. But
I think I find it useful with this to see how it is like any contamination, I guess, pattern we might talk about, that it is very easy to get into this pattern where we want the brain to be clean and clear, and then we get frustrated that it's not. It feels contaminated by this thought or this episode, or we want our life to be clean and clear. And so, like working on contamination compulsions, it's about learning, making space for that. Like we've talked about today with a bunch of things, like really inviting whatever unwanted experience to the party. Because as long as we're like, this shouldn't be here and it needs to go, we're locked in the same compulsive pattern around contamination feelings, where we're like, this feeling can't be here, I've got to fix it. And then we do all of this stuff, whether it's anger or cleaning or whatever. But that hating on it and controlling on it keeps it going.
Totally. So, well, I've got probably one more question here.
Okay.
So, I struggle with OCD, and I'm scared of telling people, especially my family. Yeah. I'm still in high school, so I need to tell my parents to get therapy and a professional diagnosis. Any advice? Man, I imagine it'd be hard to talk about some of these things, some of these themes or worries or intrusive thoughts. I've had people often pull open a video. Mark's got lots of videos. I've got videos of certain themes or topics. And sometimes that can be a good introduction of like, hey, I think this is something I'm going through. What do you think? Because to explain OCD sometimes can be really tough. People often be like, well, your room's always dirty. I don't know why you say you have OCD. Or, it's being able to have a good explanation either by an article or video. Sometimes I have people often do that. And then to be really open, like, I want to see a therapist, or I want to get diagnosed to make sure, see if this is what I have. Because you're definitely the boss of your own treatment and life.
One of the things that I find really helpful to look at with this stuff, and with mental health in general, because part of one is like Nathan was saying there, it is going to be challenging, and so whatever is going to help do that is so useful. And I also like to look at where is it we want to go. So there is this problem here, but if I get help for this, what am I going to do? And what is it getting in the way of right now? Because sometimes people don't understand the problem, but they might understand where we want to go. And I often describe it like the difference between drowning and getting swimming lessons. Like if we just tell somebody, I struggle with drowning. I can't, like the water terrifies me. I'm really anxious. It's causing all sorts of problems. They might just say, okay, well, we don't have time for this. Like just don't go near the water. And they'll like, oh, like we can't let you get near the water because like you have a drowning problem. But if we go to them and we say, yeah, you know what, I had this experience where I almost drowned and I want to learn how to swim. Can you take me to swimming lessons? Because I want to get good at swimming. I want to go in this swimming race, or I want to swim across to that island, or I'm going on vacation and I want to learn how to swim in the pool or swim in the ocean. That when we can show them what is the thing I really want you to help me learn and do, sometimes that gives other people, it gives them an opportunity to see how they can help. And so I find in general, humans tend to respond better to that when it's about, yeah, like where are we going? And we give them a way they can support us in where we're going. That's what I like to look at.
Yeah, I love that. It's OCD is definitely not one of those things that we wait to see if it's going to go away. We don't wait it out, and
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. And so I think you're awesome to even be thinking about the things you want and to move towards that. Often as a parent, their thought is like, well, they might grow out of this.
Yeah.
You know, but it's one of those things that I love that when Mark said that, like taking that initiative and saying, this is what I need. This is what I would like. Sometimes parents love that because now I have a direction. I know where to go and what to do.
Yeah. Parents get anxious too. They're uncertain. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't know what they're doing. Most parents. And so, yeah. Well, awesome. Well, there's so many more comments that we didn't get to, and I always love it if people can put those into the comments down below, and I try to go through and try to answer as many as I can. And definitely with Mark, like I said at the beginning, I have all of his links in there of all the things that he does and his book and channel, and I think you stream on Twitch.
Yep.
Like different things like that. Like, go see what Mark's doing. Like, he's an amazing guy, and I'm so happy that you're here. So is there anything else you want to say before we end here?
Oh, no, I want to thank everybody for their questions, and thank you for having me on, but also, creating this space for people to talk about these tools and learn about them. So thank you.
Yeah. So thank you guys. We'll talk to you another time.